Hey guys, Miss Warren here. Today I'm going to talk about making the clay tile. So I already have my designs done with each part labeled, which part will be sticking out additive, which part will be subtractive, which part will be even with the tile. So now I have my lump of clay. Now I need to wedge it because there's lots of gaps and holes and air bubbles in it right now, and it's not an even moisture. There's some parts that are more wet and shiny and some parts that are a little more firm. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to toss it at the table, changing directions each time to kind of mix it up. You want to do this about 40 times. It will dry out your clay just a tiny bit, and you need to do it on top of a cloth so it doesn't stick to the table. So you don't want to get it flat all the way. You want to kind of keep it in a rock shape at this stage till it's nice and mixed together. It keeps kind of sticking to my towel, that's okay. Okay, that looks pretty good and mixed. I've probably done it about 30 to 40 times. Okay, now we want to flatten it out. So now I am going to turn and toss back and forth, and I'm not going to like do it on the widest part. So, and then I'm going to flip it over, flatten it out, flip it over, flatten it out, flip it over, flatten it out. We just want to make sure that we're not folding any air bubbles in the side. You can also take it in between your hands and pat it. We want to do this till we get it close to a finger thick. You can see it's a little bit uneven when you pat it in your hands like this. It stays a little more even when you pat it on the table. You can also smooth it out, especially if you have a popsicle stick or a tool called a rib. You can smooth out the lumps and bumps in it. Get a little bit thinner with this. I want to make sure that it's larger than my tile square too. More wide and more long. I think we're almost there. Okay. If you want to kind of flatten the edges, you can kind of tap it on the table a few times. And that looks about as thick as my finger. It's a little thin on the edges here, but we're going to trim the edges off. So I'm going to go ahead and put that down. Then I'm going to take my design here and I'm going to cut it out with a pair of scissors so then we can trace it onto our piece. This is why you want your drawing to be exactly the size and shape of what you want to see on your clay piece. Trim these little extra ridges on the top. This paper off to the side. Need to make this just a little bit taller. So I'm going to flatten this out just a little bit more. There we go. Okay. You want to make sure that your whole square fits on there. And the moisture will kind of let it stick. Now I'm going to with a paper clip or a pencil, I'm going to trace my design onto my paper. I'm going to press the edges really firmly into the clay. careful not to break through the paper. It's better to do this with a dull pencil than a sharp pencil. Especially because the clay is damp, so it's going to make the paper a little bit damp. I'm going to put the border on the edges. Make sure I got the moon on there too, and any background details. You might want to do this with a contrasting color so you remember which parts you finished, which parts you didn't. So I'm going to peel it back, and it has a very light imprint. You can see when I put the shadow over it of where the deer is. Now I'm going to take a paper clip and I'm going to trim the edges because I want a tile. And I want to make sure that it's about 5 by 5 inches, about this size of my paper. I'm pressing all the way through to the cloth. Then I'm going to remove these pieces. Okay, so these will be my additive pieces. I'm going to wedge them into a ball over here to the side, so then they're ready to use for additive pieces later. So there's my tile. I've pressed my design in. You can see it when the light hits it. Then I'm going to take my leftover pieces and I'm going to wedge them back into a ball because I don't want them to dry out while I'm starting to work on my clay piece. Now, you could start additive or subtractive on your clay piece as you are working. You just want to be careful not to get too thin. So that's nice and thick on the sides there. So we have a little bit of room to carve in. So now I'm going to reference my picture. I'm going to always keep my picture close by. I know that all the black part is going to be subtractive, and I know all the orange part is going to be additive, and the purple and the teal parts are going to be kind of in between. So if you want to, you can take the loop of a paper clip and you can start scooping out some of the parts you know you're going to want subtractive. Kind of making this outline a little bit deeper. And making things stand out a little bit more. Now, if the loop is too big, you can take the edge of the paper clip and kind of press your design in more and scoop it out a little bit at a time. If you feel like your design is really delicate, like some of the scoops here of the antlers are really small, I might wait until the clay firms up a little bit to do the detail areas. I'm gonna scoop out a little bit of the back. Now, if I'm ready to do the additive portion, which is this antler here, I'm gonna put my main tile off to the side and I'm gonna flatten out my leftover clay here again. So I've already wedged it and I'm gonna start flattening it out. You probably want this a little bit thinner than your main piece of tile because we are gonna add this. Flatten it on the table a little bit. Okay, now I'm gonna take my paper and I'm gonna trace the antlers because those are the parts I know that I want to stick out the most. I'm gonna start with the orange antlers because I know that and the ear. Then I'm gonna take my paper clip and I'm gonna trim out the outside. Okay, so we'll go ahead and finish that in the next video, but this is basically how you would start. I would trim out any extra pieces and I would start to score them and slip them onto my main tile. So go ahead and give that a try, guys, and I look forward to seeing your work, and I'll come back in the next video with the next steps.